Hello, hello. My name is Wes Jefferson Ong. I'm a PM on Xbox, and I'm here to talk to you about how you can supercharge your creator community with Playfab Ugc. So I'll go over the quick agenda for today. So we'll start with talking about what is user-generated content, or UGC. We'll go into a quick in-game demo to kind of showcase what it's like to see a great UGC experience. Then I'll go into specifically what's Playfab Ugc, and how you can use it, and what are the next steps for all of us. So what is UGC, or user-generated content? So quite simply, as the name suggests, it is game content created by players. The big thing about this is it can be completely different for any different type of game. It can be as simple as texture packs or art updates, all the way up to UI changes, up to completely changing the gameplay. And I think what's important to know about basically enabling content from players is that it's powerful for both the player and the content creator. As a player, UGC is an endless source of entertainment and content. It can transform existing experiences into something completely new. Familiar game paths or game mechanics can suddenly be exciting and completely transform the way you play. And as a content creator, the UGC means that you are tapping into a new sense of community and a completely powerful set of dedicated player base. These are UGC content creators represent some of your most passionate players that are willing to go beyond the classic just playing the game and really want to tap into making their game as great as possible. With that, I want to jump into a demo of one of the titles using Playfab Ugc today, and that's Microsoft Flight Simulator. So if you'll see right here, this is me clicking through the game. So this is the general welcome page. I'm going to jump right into the marketplace where you can find all the content. So this is the general landing page. You can see all the different things they're featuring nowadays with lots of new items. I'm going to go into their full catalog. So right away, you're greeted with a ton of content. You can see there's a bunch of different tiles, all representing different items. You can see on the left, there's a bunch of sorting. On the top, there's also more filters you can play around with. There's just a ton of different options for you. You can have sorting options, as you can see here. There's category filters representing all these different item types. As described before, Flight Sim has aircraft, airport, scenery, a lot of different options for you to, a lot of different types of content. So as you can see, I'm setting a filter for scenery, and I can use the search functionality on the top right, and I can say, something like United States, and this will give me all the scenery within the States. And you can see there's a ton of different options. Let me remove this filter, and I'm going to head over to, let's start looking at all the different other options. A big thing to note is you can see there's a creator filter, tons of different creators. And specifically, I'm going to go and select an aircraft now. And you can see, specifically, there's a lot of different items, and a bunch are created by Microsoft and Asobo, but for the most part, majority of the items you're seeing here aren't created by Microsoft, and instead are created by all these different third-party creators. And this is amazing to see. Like for Flight Simulator, this means they have tapped into this huge community that's all creating content for their game. And especially for a title like Flight Simulator, where people have different affinities towards different items. They want the planes they've ridden on. They want to get the airports they've been to, the sceneries of their hometown. And it's close to an impossible feat for Flight Sim to single-handedly provide this content and this specificity that matches every player's needs. So by opening it up to everyone else, they are able to meet all of these specific requests, all of these specific desires, and it's all because they're leveraging user-generated content. I think another thing that's important to note is sort of the display they're using here. So on this tile itself, you can see a thumbnail of the plane, the price, the reviews, the platforms that they're using. But you can also choose to present it in a greater detail. So if you see, I'll go into a specific plane that I'm interested in, such as this one. And you can see now there's even more detail. You can see now more screenshots of the plane, higher resolution. You can see detailed breakdowns of their descriptions. You can see more specifications of the plane itself, as well as models and all the different color palette options. And I think the important thing to note is both of these views are constructed from the same item. And when you're thinking about the user-generated content scenarios for your game, this is a key thing to think about, is you'll need to display all these items in different ways. And you need that flexibility to kind of present all of these different options. So that was a general idea of sort of what a really developed UGC scenario can look like for a game. And if you want to add it, there's really lots you need to think about, besides the first one obviously being just where you store it. But beyond that, it gets into so many small details that are sometimes overlooked. So you need to think about localization. How do you handle presenting content created by different people from around the world? Do you support localization? And if so, what does that look like? How do you handle updating of items? So if someone wants to push an update to change a plane or change a piece of content, what does that mean? Do you want to support ratings and reviews? Moderation, how do you want to display it? We talked about this dual view that's really important for both having that search view as well as that detailed in-content view. Tags and filter. There's also this idea of like limited time offerings, whether you want content to specifically show up at certain times. All of these things are important to think about when you're trying to add a UGC system, and that's where we come in. So Playfab UGC is a set of APIs which are focused on supporting you in that UGC journey. We provide a bunch of APIs and a bunch of workflows that make that scenario as painless and as easy to integrate as possible. We want you to sort of have all of these different options to create so that all of these decision points, all you need to think about is what works best for your game instead of how you can get it working. So in addition to all of these different things, and such as moderation and ratings and reviews, you also get all the goodness of just being part of the Playfab system. This includes telemetry, automation, all of these, and all the cross-platform support that Playfab is really focused on. You get this when you choose Playfab to be your UGC provider. This has been in terms of the very first point, we talked about storing the items. And that's obviously a big part of it. If you have a huge player base, this is a lot of items and this is a lot of content. And Playfab UGC has proven that we can handle all this content. We have 2 billion queries per day, 4.5 billion content downloads, which is 550 terabytes in daily content. This is absolutely massive, and the team's been working especially hard to know that they can handle the scale of all these huge titles. The whole idea behind UGC is we want to make this system as flexible for any game's use case. We've been supporting various services, various titles, and even though that this title, we're releasing it to public preview in 2020, this has been part of and developed since 2017 for internal Microsoft teams. And these are some of the biggest titles in gaming, all using the same UGC system. So we knew that when we're building a system like this, it needs to fit with everyone's needs. So how do you get started with when you want to use, let's say you decided to use UGC? What you want to think about are these 3 main points. Firstly is the idea of creating items. So this is the content creators will create these items and upload them. Then it comes to publishing, which means the content is released and is accessible to all the entire player base, which is when it'll be discovered using search and other APIs to curate the experience. And that's kind of the main idea you saw in the flight sim demo. We'd have the content creators creating all of those items you saw, which are now released, and that view and that discovery is especially key in creating a great user-generated content experience. So starting off with how Playfab helps you this is the item creation process. So we talked about how localization is a big thing. So Playfab UGC supports localized titles, descriptions, keywords. You can see here there's the neutral description for this title. Neutral is the default localization if a localized field doesn't exist. There's also tags and content types and platforms. We support images and files. All of these different baseline item metadata options are the key things you want to display when presenting it to the players. The other important thing is the idea behind draft items. So Playfab UGC allows you to create items in both the draft and published state, with draft items being still not released out to the public. And this option allows you to not only, often UGC can be very complicated, right? So different map packs, they can be as simple, like I mentioned before, they can be as simple as small textures, but as complicated as whole new gameplay features. By having a draft system, this allows procedural updates and allows your content creators to take their time so that they can release the content when they feel like it's right. When it's ready, they can then publish it and it's released out to the public. But at the same time, often items need to have constant updates. And a published item still has its draft item stored, which means you can still make updates to this draft item and then eventually have it released out to public. What this means is even if an item is out, your content creators can continuously keep making updates and to ensure that they don't have to take down the item when they want to make a change, and that players can constantly consume the very best content. So search is one of probably the most powerful features of Playfab UGC. As you saw from the flight sim demo, it's especially key to constantly display all these different options when you're presenting a huge catalog of items. So specifically for search, when you can see here, you have your free text options, in this case for Boeing, but you can also filter by different tags, different content types, ordering by different options, controlling how much content you receive at a time. All of this is especially key in having that customizability for what your items look like when you're displaying it to the player. And finally, this leads into a very powerful aspect, which is known as display properties. So the way you want to think about it is every single game there's those core items, the title, the description, tags. But beyond that, every game is very different. And which means your user-generated content being created is also very different. So for example, imagine you're creating different game puzzles or game modes for your players. Difficulty rating becomes incredibly relevant. Let's say you're creating a new battle map. Suddenly max players are important. If you want to time things, event start date becomes a property you want to filter on. And what display properties allow you to do is for your specific game, you can set a specific property for your items, which is then filterable and searchable like any other of those previous fields. So this is what allows Playfab UGC to fit with all these different game scenarios. The needs of Halo, very different than the needs of Flight Sim, which is very different from the needs of Minecraft. And the whole idea is they use different display properties so that they can present the content in the absolute best way, and their UGC items fit with their game's needs perfectly. Other important thing to think about is moderation. We provide the workflow that supports a wide variety of different moderation workflows. So you can set the item's moderation state, which means you can hide the item for the public, which allows you to either review it personally or offset it to the role of a different team. We support different scenarios, whether you want to have a dedicated moderation team that's constantly looking at your catalog, or you want to handle through community, where users can report on items that they don't feel are appropriate. Both of these and many more moderation scenarios are all supported with Playfab UGC. Next is the idea of ratings and reviews. which is especially important that when your items start growing and your item catalog starts growing, you really need to ensure that you have a way to figure out what is the best content to showcase and focus on. And this is where having the ratings and review support is especially key. Being able to have players provide feedback on creators that are creating the best content or content that's worth showcasing. All of this allows you as the developer to figure out what you can do to make your community better and how to constantly keep improving your UGC pipeline. Finally, I want to talk about Game Manager. So Game Manager is going to be sort of your starting point when you're entering your Playfab journey, UGC or otherwise. This is where you'll start up your account, create your title, and start playing around with all the different things Playfab has to offer and UGC has to offer. So right here, I'm showing the Data Explorer page where you can actually query all the different events for your games happening. Specifically, this query is looking at an item being reported and the reports an item is getting. Another thing Game Manager allows you to do is it has the same edit functionality that you can build for your game. This allows you to constantly keep and monitor to add content specifically. So as a developer, if you want to add new items, this is a great place to do it. As well as if you want to make any changes to existing items, such as changing the moderation state, updating localization pipelines, all of this can be done through here. Finally, once your community does grow and your game is up and running, Game Manager provides an amazing interface to sort of see how your game is doing. You can look at all the specific details of about the content produced in your game, how it's doing, as well as all the creators that are constantly creating the content. So we're extremely proud of what we're releasing with Playfab UGC, but at the same time, it's all about constantly improving. And we know that every game has different needs, and we're constantly trying to match the ever-growing needs for creating the best user-generated content experience for both creators and players. So right now, we have a lot of cool things that we're currently developing, and these are things that we're excited to be working on and showing to you. So the first of which being item preferences. So this is the ability to provide an even more curated feedback experience for your players beyond ratings and reviews. So this means things like being able to like items, subscribe to them, create a favorites list for your best items, as well as to present all this aggregate data as a developer to your players. The other thing we're happy to be working on is background downloads. As a player, it's the worst when you hop in and you see a huge loading time because all your mods need to be updated. So we're looking towards building a system that allows PC and Xbox downloads to be happening in the background. So players can jump right in, get the freshest updates for all their content, and just playing right away. And this is just the tip of the iceberg for everything we're working on. The team is hard at work to be creating all new things for UGC, and I'll be so excited to share when it comes out. If you're interested in learning more, you can look at the Playfab Docs, which provides specific tutorials and documentation for UGC and Playfab in general. If you're looking to jump right in, you can create a free account, which this will take you to. This is what I talked about with Game Manager. This is the space where you will start off the account and set up your title. If you have more specific questions about Playfab and UGC, the forums are there to help answer any questions you may have. Thank you so much.